Welcome to the Healthier Tech Podcast, the show about building a healthier relationship with modern technology. Now, here are your hosts, R. Blank and Stephanie Warner.
Lisa Pitel Killah is a hair mineral analysis expert and educator, board-certified holistic health practitioner, functional diagnostic practitioner, multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, and founder of Vicon Supplements. Lisa chose to specialize in a type of testing called HTMA, or hair tissue mineral analysis, when that diagnostic test was the first to identify the root cause of her debilitating fatigue. Lisa believes minerals are the foundation of health and longevity. And from the science of HTMA, you can identify exactly what your body or your animal's body needs to thrive. Lisa is passionate about guiding people to maximize health, reverse debilitating symptoms, and gain energy to truly recognize their full potential. Welcome to the Healthier Tech Podcast, Lisa.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful. I cannot wait to share knowledge.
Yeah, no, and it's great having you, and it's also great to talk to you again. For those who don't know, I was on your biohacking superhuman performance podcast, which was a fantastic experience. So it's great to be able to reciprocate and have you here.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure. And yes, we had such an amazing conversation. I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
I'm really happy I get to be a part of it.
Exactly.
Welcome and thanks for coming on.
Okay, so we're gonna get straight into the heart of the topic here right now. Kettlebell sport world champion. Those are really heavy, right? I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
I'm giggling because that's how my neighbor says it, or he calls them cowbells. I'm like, they're not cowbells, Mike. Oh my goodness. No, I've always been a fitness enthusiast. I just feel better when I'm training, and I guess, when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I ended up finding and kind of stumbling upon kettlebells. I had done training workouts with them in boot camps and things years prior, but I didn't realize there was a sport. And when I did, oh my goodness, because I grew up being a competitive figure skater, a lot of events or sports that you compete in, there's an age limit. Right? So I was so happy to find something where I didn't have to be 20 or 25 years old. And after that, competing was just not an option. And so I ran with it, and it was fantastic. And they are heavy. So, and I love that too, right? Think about it. I love that too. So yeah, I ran with it.
What is the sport that is it just about lifting, or is it throwing? Is it running with them? Like, what do you have to
my
do?
Goodness. So there's three basically different disciplines. And so very similar to weightlifting, there's a discipline that would kind of correlate with clean and jerk, which we call long cycle. And then there's the snatch, which is a continuous movement. And of course, weightlifters have a snatch as well. And so that basically the entire premise of the sport is that you are on a platform for 10 minutes. And if you're doing a one-handed lift, you get to change hands once. If you're doing a two-handed lift, you don't have that option, obviously. And you need to do as many technically correct reps as possible in order to place.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And do you still do that, or is that?
I do. Yeah. And you know what? It is as physically challenging as it is mentally challenging, because when you hit about 7.5 minutes, I call that the tunnel, because that's the tunnel of your brain saying, I can't do this anymore. And you have to literally push yourself to get through that tunnel. And then when you get past that point and you've got 2 minutes to go, that's when you can just go for it, because you're almost finished. And I have students that are in their 60s. They set world records last year. They won world medals.
Wow.
It's such an amazing sport, because again, it doesn't matter what your body shape is. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can absolutely embrace it and thrive and travel the world.
That's super cool.
Great. Yeah.
So I obviously like starting with that, because it's just a cool fact about you, and I think it gives some insight into you, but also because it is so. When I hear someone suffering from debilitating fatigue, I don't think, oh, well, that person's obviously going to go on to become a world champion. But so that's a pretty crazy journey. So what was that experience like? When did it start? What did it do to your life? I mean, fatigue would be hard for anybody, but I imagine, it's got to be even harder for an athlete.
It was tough. And so so basically the journey started, I've always been an entrepreneur since I was in my early 20s. And I had opened a brick and mortar business kind of in the late 2000, like 2009, right before 2010 came along. And that business I opened in a recession. It was very, very difficult. And I put myself into burnout. And so, there were days where I have truly had trouble getting out of bed. And so I started my real health journey then, because I knew that I had to start taking care of myself, and so I started doing that. I started back at the gym, and I actually started powerlifting to begin with, because powerlifting is actually a great way to be able to put stress on your body, but not so much like endurance where it's continuous stress. You get a break in between. So I really found that helped to kind of nourish my adrenals, but keep me active at the same time. And then, of course, after I started feeling a little bit better, my energy started coming back. That's when I wanted to get back into kettlebells. And then, the world journey started from there. And again, just discovering the sport, falling in love with one of the disciplines that I really liked doing, because it was not only technically challenging, but it also got me in the best shape of my life so quickly. And that's an amazing part about kettlebells too. And, I always think about this because we did a seminar in Chicago. It's probably about 8 or 9 years ago now. And they put us on a VO2 max machine. We were there for 3 days. And so we're at the university, they put you on a VO2 max, they put you on the treadmill, right? Normal VO2 max test. And I remember I made it, partway through that whole process. And I think by the time my heart rate hit 185, I was pretty much done. And, I couldn't raise that treadmill any longer. And so that was a bit short-lived. It wasn't a bad outcome. But the next day, they put the mask back on us to test our VO2 max while we were doing our lift with our competition weight. So mine is 16 kilos. So it's around 35, 37 pounds. And I snatched for 5 full minutes, and my VO2 was higher, but my heart rate only ever got to 168. So it was an incredible experience just to see, because your breathing is so important that you can actually control the rate of how much stress is on your body, even though you're going really fast and lifting that weight. So it was a really interesting kind of experience to be tested like that, to see the difference. And I noticed, even after I started kettlebells, all of a sudden people are like, oh, do you want to run a 5K? And I'm like, yeah. And you just go, like, there's no training for running. It's just because it's all about what you've built for endurance at that point with the actual bell as you're lifting, because it's not only building muscle, but it's also building your cardiovascular system. So it's really, really a unique tool.
So so you responded to your issues with fatigue with sport and exercise, but that's not what you identify as your root cause of the fatigue, right? What was that, and what's the process by which you actually identified it?
So the process by that, so at the time I was studying functional medicine and diagnostic testing. And I had all kinds of different diagnostic tests during my training, which I wanted to complete, because if I was going to put clients through any of these tests, obviously I wanted to have done them myself. And I'd done that for a few years. And then a colleague of mine, because I was still having fatigue after I had gone through parasites, C. diff, H. pylori, everything under the sun. My gut was an onion. I was peeling apart the layers and fixing them as I went. But I still had that fatigue. And this was kind of before I started weightlifting. This was when I was doing all of this to get my health back on track. And then, of course, once I started feeling a little bit better, I was starting to train and starting to do things, but not heavily at that point. I knew there was still something wrong. I just didn't feel like myself. And I'm a go-getter, type A personality, get it done, right? And I just didn't feel like that person mentally anymore. And I knew there was something better. And I just happened upon hair tissue mineral analysis. A practitioner said to me, she goes, why don't you test your hair? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, you just send in a hair sample, you can see your minerals, your levels. And that's when I identified why I could not get rid of my estrogen dominance, because I had a copper dysregulation. And when copper is deeply buried in the body and in organs, it really causes a lot of debilitating symptoms. And that was the root cause of what I was struggling with. And even today, I think about that and I've thought, if I only found that test earlier, I may have been able to avoid some of those other steps and a lot of suffering along the way. And so I actually was dealing with that copper dysregulation while I was competing at the World Championships for, the kind of the span of 2016 to 2018. So a lot of people think, oh my goodness, if I have a problem, I'm going to be debilitated. That's not true. If you're taking care of it properly and you're supporting your body and you're gently allowing your body to deal with what's happening, rather than doing some of those hardcore detoxes and a lot of things we hear about, you can still achieve amazing things and have energy every day to do what you want to do. And that's exactly what I did.
That's really great. And as you're talking about the test that helped show you what was going on with your copper levels, it really makes me wonder, are there other tests? Like, were you seeing that in other tests, like, a urine analysis or a blood analysis? And really, what kind of pushed you to the hair analysis? Because I find that actually very fascinating. And I haven't really heard much about hair testing. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, copper is a tough one. There's not a lot of really great tests out there to identify copper. And even on an HTMA test, if you do an HTMA test, right, with one of the recommended labs, you can't even identify copper dysregulation just by looking at it. You have to look at 12 different markers in order to identify a potential dysregulation. And so that's one of the most fascinating facts about copper itself and just about minerals in general. When we think of the interactions minerals and vitamins have with each other and how taking an isolated ingredient, an isolated mineral or a vitamin can affect so many other levels of minerals and vitamins, right? When we're ingesting, let's say we're taking copper, or even if we're taking zinc in high doses by itself, that's going to affect another mineral or more, and vitamins, right? People don't think about that. They just think, oh, I need to take this for immunity, but it's a single ingredient. And that's a dangerous thing to do, because you need to make sure that all of those things are in balance in order for your body to be able to thrive.
And that's why you're a holistic health practitioner instead of okay.
The big picture, right? Yes, the big picture.
No, totally. Yeah. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that someone's mineral balance might be off kilter?
Oh my goodness, so many. I see people, when you have minerals that are out of balance. So one of the kind of less common ones, but the interesting ones, is when someone is under a lot of stress and their sodium increases. So if you have an acute stress response, the first mineral that's going to increase to support your adrenal response is sodium. But that sodium comes along with aggressiveness, irritability, some moodiness. So when we have that stress and we get into that kind of snappy, when you're having a conversation and you're like, oh, I wouldn't normally react like that, but it was very quick. And you maybe not even consciously realizing that you're doing it. That's sodium. And, when we bring in some of the anti-stress minerals, you think about today, who's not stressed? And so right? Who's not stressed? And when you bring in some of those anti-stress minerals, like your magnesium and that potassium that's being lost from the kidneys, and then some zinc and things like that, it's really important to have that balance for when you are stressed and the body is responding heightened, to calm that just slightly, so your response is more calming, and rather than that aggressiveness and having some of that irritability.
We've talked a lot about minerals and how they impact. But your health and you're optimizing your health, and in fact, your podcast is called, has superhuman performance in the title. What are some of the other factors that you have found and that you work with that can impact or affect human optimization?
Oh, so many. I think that if people can think about lifestyle, right? How many factors lifestyle choices make. And I feel like sometimes people think that their life has to be their lifestyle choices have to be 100%. And that's not true. Sometimes there's things that people enjoy doing that's part of their relaxation process. I use the 80-20 rule always, right? 80% of the time, make those healthy choices, because then you're not putting so much stress on yourself, because we're trying to de-stress and be healthier, but we're putting ourselves under stress because our day isn't perfect. Sorry,
if I may, because
Yeah.
you keep talking about stress,
Yep.
and I'm wondering if you're talking about stress like, oh my gosh, my taxes are due, or if you're talking about stress like oxidative stress and cellular stress response, and so, or is that all the same? Like that?
So I call that internal and external. And so that is stress to me, right? And so some people, a lot of people actually, when you think about, oh my goodness, my taxes are due, maybe I don't have that money in the bank, or how am I going to do that? That's the external stress, right? Work, finances, sometimes family, right? Those things. But people forget sometimes about the internal stress, which causes that oxidative stress in the body. And overall, it's going to have the same response, right? You're going to have that same response, and your body is going to be put up to creating more energy to handle that. And so taking some steps, regardless of, how often, I always say, people are afraid of meditation, but meditation is such a great way to ground yourself and bring yourself back into the moment. But you don't have to do it for an hour. Right? I feel like in today's day and age, things have to be convenient in order for people to implement them. So even one of the simple practices I do is, if I have a moment where I feel like my stress is rising, something's transpired, I'll just sit back and take 10 deep breaths. And by the time I'm done taking those 10 deep breaths, which doesn't take me very long, my entire kind of stress response in my body has changed. And then I can have a new look at that stress so that I can deal with it in an effective and efficient manner, rather than something where later I would say, I should have dealt with that differently. And that has a different effect on your body and that oxidative stress that causes. So I think that that's a really valid point, that people have to have that convenience. But again, that's part of that 80-20. When you feel that, when something's happening, you step back, relook at it, and don't beat yourself up if you have, a day where it's a little more stressful than another. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's a new day to do new things and to be whatever you want to be.
So, and I want to get into talking about the solutions, the services that you offer. But before we do, I think the stress it's a good segue into, obviously this is the healthier tech podcast.
Yeah.
One of the key problems that we are seeing with that tech is causing in people are various manifestations of stress.
Yep.
So I want to ask you about your personal relationship with technology, because you're focused a lot, I can tell, not only on your own optimization, but your own stress levels. What have you noticed about your own personal relationship with technology? How do you focus on the behaviors with your devices and so forth?
Yeah. So, I always think about, and I come back to our podcast that we did is so many times when I make decisions, and I see people, because I remember you saying about earbuds. And at the time I hadn't switched because I was skeptical, and I'm like, there has to be something. And when you started talking about the fact that it's right there, there's no buffer, I thought, oh my goodness. And I see all these people, medical doctors, all kinds of people with these earbuds in, and I think the damage that that's causing. And I shut down everything at night, right? I always make sure I have no devices on at night. Everything is either off or in airplane mode. Wi-Fi is shut down, because again, EMFs are so detrimental to our hormones, to our system. There's so many imbalances that can come from that. And I guess the only thing that I want to say, just with regards to the phone. So I have, and I love it, the string bag where I put my phone. It's like a purse, right? That Shields Your Body has. And I use that every single day. I'm literally going to put up, right? Every single day. If you see me anywhere, I have that bag. And that's for that reason, because I'm carrying my phone and I don't want it to be causing, it's hormone disrupting. And I think that that's such a huge point. And I see people with their phone beside their head, they're talking on the phone, and I cringe. And I think, oh my goodness, do you know what that's doing to you? And then even, now we have 5G. right? Everybody's so excited 5G's coming. I'm like, oh no, that's that's another level of what this is all about. And so I really do try and be cognizant of that, because I know how detrimental it can be and how much stress it can cause. And again, just going back to stress, because I feel like all of these things, and if it was a little bit of this or a little bit of that, but we have all these things coming at us all day long, and that really starts to affect us and start depleting us pretty quickly.
And so, yeah, have you noticed, like you mentioned the earbuds, and thank you. I'm glad I made a difference. But when you do things like that, when you make those changes, when you make those conscious decisions, do you notice a difference, or do you feel it?
I do. I'm always making a conscious decision about my energy and just how I feel overall. And I think that when you are exposing yourself, and I call it a toxin because ultimately it's toxicity, regardless of whether you're breathing it in or whatever, it's still a toxin in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely feel a difference. And I've switched from anything wireless pretty much that is going to be near me. Even when I'm on my phone, I have a headset on. I never have my phone close to my head. I never put my phone in my pants pocket or my coat pocket. I always have it in my Shield Your Body bag. Even my laptop. I always take a break from my laptop, step away for a little while. And if I'm using my laptop sitting on the couch, like many people are doing nowadays, it shouldn't be sitting on your lap. You've got to shield I have a shield my body thing that my laptop sits on, and I use that. Right? So everybody should be, and those are easy things that people can do. Easy things.
And what's really nice too is and I want to, since we're talking about shielding products, which is, what SYB does, I think it's also important to just kind of state too, that even if you don't do products, just keep your devices farther away from your body. Yep. The farther away you keep it, and even if it's just inches, that can make a huge difference. And then, it also can help our mental focus as well, and our well-being, just not always being tethered.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And again, with all of the tech nowadays that we have, right? And there's more and more and more.
Yeah.
People have to start being more cognizant about that. Even as simple as just leaving your phone shut off at night, right? Yeah. They've got it plugged in and it's transmitting right beside their head while they're trying to sleep. How are you going to hit REM sleep with that happening?
Right.
So, just shut your phone off. Such a simple solution. It is. I mean, right? So yeah, it's something so simple that literally somebody can do right now, today.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that, you're sharing that information. And we always love having an opportunity to talk about good hygiene with our devices. I'd like to segue a little bit, and I'd love it if you would tell us about the LPK Health and Performance Group.
Yeah. So really, I started this group years ago. A lot of athletes were asking me, how do I test minerals? And, you've made such an incredible change in your life. And so it was a really interesting journey. And honestly, with what I had learned, I couldn't wait to share with people. And so we do mainly HTMA testing, which again is hair tissue mineral analysis. But we offer some other diagnostic testing too. And now we're worldwide. So we've got lots of practitioners on board with the LPK Health Group, along with myself. And changing lives of people, giving them more energy is really what it's all about. Or even if they're athletes, taking their performance to the next level in a natural way.
So how would someone like me have an HTMA test done?
Yeah. All you have to do is go to lpkhealthgroup.com. If you have questions, there's a contact there. My assistant, Katie, can definitely give you lots of information. And yeah, it's as simple as that.
No, but I mean, follically challenged individuals.
You can do other hair, you can do nails. There's other ways to be able to test for minerals.
Okay, cool. And so your clients are, what, athletes or business people? Honestly, looking to optimize
we have a whole wide range of clients, all the way from children who have issues. We've worked with children with autism. We work with business entrepreneurs, athletes, just the average person that says, I don't feel like myself anymore and I want my energy back. That's, a very typical response of why someone reaches out, because they just don't feel like themselves. And I know what that feels like because I went through that too when I was searching. And I feel like a lot of times we'll get individuals who have done a lot of different diagnostic testing, but just haven't gotten to that root cause, and they're still searching.
So once you have someone like me who would obviously send in nails instead of hair, we get the test results, and I have a mineral profile of some kind established. Yep. Is that then when your protocol comes to your
absolutely
foundation
yes.
mineral protocol? So how does someone work with you on that?
Yeah, so the Foundation Mineral Protocol is really something that came about probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I started thinking about this because, protocols in general, for those that have worked with holistic health practitioners before, naturopathic doctors, people like that, they can be a little bit intense. And there can be a lot of moving parts. And I found that that was causing people extra stress, because now they had to manage all these things every day with what was supposed to be helping with their stress and energy levels and all of this. And so that's really where Vicon supplements came in, because I can literally put the ingredients of a protocol into one powder. Now, not all of the protocol necessarily, there might be a couple of extra things. But most of the minerals, vitamins, potentially amino acids are in a powder. So you take it twice a day. It's super convenient. And you don't have, a box of supplements that you have to organize weekly to take every day.
That's great. Yeah, no, when the treatment when your treatment for stress adds stress to your life,
right,
then you really got to start asking, like,
what am I doing?
What am I doing here?
What am I doing? Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in some cases that's necessary, right? Mold toxicity, things like that. They're pretty, you don't have a choice. But in our general daily life, if you're pretty healthy and you just want to get more energy, or you have some symptoms and you want to try and help to support your foundation, perfect way to do that.
Can you go ahead and tell us about your upcoming HTMA virtual summit?
Absolutely. So the summit actually happens twice a year. So we have our virtual summit that launches with all of our new presentations each November. It's usually the second week of November. It's absolutely free. We always have 6 to 10 speakers with presentations focusing on mineral balance. It can be other energies as well. There's a lot of practitioners that work with energy work along with minerals, which is really great and really interesting. There's also practitioners that do animal testing. So it's always really interesting if you have animals that are suffering as well. And then we relaunch that again, in case you missed it, of course, in the second week of June. So that's going to be coming up in June. You'll see the advertising for that on the H2MA Virtual Summit Instagram. And again, that's absolutely free. But if someone does want to hop on, we do have all the videos available from all the years that we've hosted so far. And it's just a great way to bring some of the experts together to share some success stories, some case studies, and just to share new information.
That's great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you have you have this library of videos. But for our listeners, if you're just hearing about this, we don't know, we've never heard about this before. Where would we start? Where would you tell us to start?
Oh, I would head to my website. So my website is lisapatelkillah.com. I'm sure you'll put that in the description.
Definitely show notes.
Like I don't have to spell that out.
Yeah.
No.
And go to the education page there, because I actually have videos that I've done for the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. And those videos are just on some of the hotter topics of HTMA testing. So it gives you a little background, tells you a little bit about the significant ratios, and then it tells you about some of the common things that we're seeing and how it affects health. So a great way to watch some videos there on my YouTube channel too.
Excellent. We'll include both of those links in the show notes. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the Healthier Tech podcast today to teach us all about this. You're our first guest on this topic. I learned a lot, and it's super great just to talk to you again.
Oh my goodness, yes. And thank you so much for having me and being able to share this knowledge.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthier Tech podcast. Remember to check the show notes for all the links and resources mentioned in the show. Please like and subscribe to the Healthier Tech podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Get your free quick start guide to building a healthier relationship with technology and our latest information at healthiertech.co.